Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And it has come to my attention that on the release day of Game of Thrones, that ESPN, and that's the one that I read, along with several other big sports news websites, all reported that World's Strongest Man, Hafthor Bjornsson, I think I got that right. We get that right? Who plays on Game of Thrones, plays the Mountain, Gregor Clegane, which, by the way, Game of Thrones is my favorite TV show. And some of you are going to chime in and say, well, you know, I've never seen a single episode. Guys, not having seen any Game of Thrones is the new vegan, right? That's like when you go around telling everybody that I'm a vegan, or I CrossFit, right? Like everyone knows, like if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, everybody knows that because you tell everybody all the time. It's the new vegan thing. It's something that you have to announce all the time as part of your identity. It doesn't make you cool. In fact, you're missing out. It's a fantastic show. Quite possibly the best TV show ever put on the air in my lifetime. So the popularity of the show kind of triggered ESPN to make this announcement. They put Game of Thrones and they put The Mountain and all of that in their titles on the release day of the last season of Game of Thrones. A lot of people say, well, what's the big deal, Jason? That's a great time to release it. Well, yeah, that would be a great time to release some news like that, other than there's a problem. It's a 2-year-old interview. In other words, Thor, because that's what he's lovingly called in the strange world, if Thor had admitted this, say, last week, it would be news. The problem is that you have major sports news websites who jump up and decide to capitalize on Game of Thrones by releasing a statement that's 2 years old in order to get traffic. Now, I get it, guys. I get it. Absolutely get it. I mean, I run a website here. I'm all about getting my own traffic. But at the end of the day, to announce something when you're supposed to be announcing news, right? You're announcing news. To take an interview that's 2 years old and to highlight it as if it's suddenly some magical revealing statement. And the mere fact of even questioning whether all the guys in top levels of strongman or any strength sport, or even the NFL, to even question if they are on gear or not is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, let's be honest here. Anyone out there at this point in the game, if you honestly think that there's a single person playing at the Super Bowl, or a single person who is even qualified to compete in the World's Strongest Man, I don't even get there, just qualified to get there. If you think that there is even the remotest possibility that any of them did it without any sort of performance-enhancing drugs, you're extremely naive and you are detached from reality. Because that's not the world that we live in. That is not the world that we live in. And that's just simple reality. And it's not being a hater. That's not being jealous. That is simply explaining the facts. Let's be realistic here. Hopefully all of you out there realize that steroids actually do work. They do work. Okay? They actually have potent effects in the body. And when you're in a serious competitive environment, when you're in any sport that has particularly a strength or a muscle size element, either one of those, or even an endurance element to some extent, if you honestly think that when you have any sport to where you already have the genetic cream of the crop for those traits in that sport, meaning some people are just genetically better at lifting heavy objects than others. Certain people are simply better runners than others. We don't need to get into all the specific genetic traits, but most of you have figured that out at various points in your life. You figured that out in sports well before you reached adulthood. Right? Some people are just more gifted than others, naturally gifted. Well, all the people who are in these top level endeavors are the best of the best already, right? They are the most talented at what they do. They're well within the top 1%. And they're competing with other people in the top 1% who have just as much work ethic than they do. There are substances out there that increase aggression. They increase drive and motivation. I mean, let's be realistic here. What do most of you know out there? Things like testosterone, they make you slightly more aggressive. It gives you drive and motivation. Do you think that applies to athletes also? Right? Everyone knows this is what testosterone does in the human body. It's one of the effects, sex drive and other stuff, but that is considered to be a male characteristic biologically, and it's based upon hormones in the body and their effects on the brain. These substances can increase motivation, drive, aggression. They also can improve work capacity, endurance, They enhance recovery. So I want people to think about that. We're not even getting into the muscle gain part. That's before we even get into the fact that a lot of these substances actually do just legitimately grow muscle on people even without working out. Well, we can argue about how much. That's a point of major contention. But even if we set that part aside and we just look at the other things, you look at the other things, when you're in a competitive environment that already has the best 1% or better of the talent in any sport, where people are competing with each other for major awards, large sums of money, they're all gifted, they're all motivated. You don't think that the people who are having to compete against other genetically gifted and talented people with great work capacities and great work ethics, that substances that improve motivation, improve drive, increase work capacity, and enhance recovery to allow you to recover better from the other workload. So right there, even the latter one, if all other factors were equal, if you took the 10 most motivated people in the world who are genetically gifted and 5 of them were given a substance that improved recovery, just improved the ability to recover from training, and all 10 of those people trained as hard as they could, what do you think is going to happen? Which ones are going to become better faster? The 5 who are on substances that improve recovery. Because all of them are going to train to their limit. If they're highly motivated, athletes are all going to train to their limit. The ones who can recover from it better can do more and recover from it. So these substances improve all those traits, though. Improve work capacity, increase drive, increase motivation, improve recovery. Does anyone out there honestly think in a competitive environment they're not all using them? And that's even in the drug-tested sports. You take World's Strongest Man, they don't drug test. It's not even against the rules, okay? It's not even against the rules in that sport. So let's take the fact that people are going to ask that, oh, have you ever used anything? There's no possibility there's anyone up there who's not using a lot of things. And it's not just have you used anything. It's like, no, they should be asking these guys, what's your list look like? Did you use 10 times the amount of horses given, or did you use 20 times the amount of horses given? That's what they should be using. They shouldn't be asking, have you used them? That's no shock. They should actually be asking how much. That's the real question. So to come and even ask the guy that is ludicrous. It's not news. Like, hopefully anyone out there who follows any sort of strength sport or any sport in general understands that at this point, the fact that athletes use drugs that improve their motivation, their work capacity, their recovery, their muscle mass, can even improve endurance. Go back and look at Lance Armstrong, right? They can improve endurance. They affect red blood cell count. Well, red blood cell count is heavily tied with endurance and cardiovascular capacity. Most of these substances increase the amount of red blood cells your body produces. Even testosterone does that. To the point to where people who are oftentimes given prescription testosterone have to donate blood or have their doctors actually draw blood to get their red blood cell count down, because it can sometimes go into the unhealthy levels just from the extra amount you produce. Well, that's the same thing that people do for high altitude training. They're trying to get that exact same effect. Do you guys see the problem here? The idea that this is news is ludicrous. Well, the worst part of it, they go back and they take an interview from 2 years ago to where he admitted, yeah, of course I have. If you want to be the best, you do what you have to do to win. And it's ridiculous to ask someone that who is among the best in the world and has been the best in the world, is one, in a sport that doesn't even ban it. I mean, think about that for a moment. To ask the best in the world in a sport where drugs have an enormous factor, an absolutely enormous impact, and where they're not even against the rules and they're not banned, to ask them and to act like it's news is already ludicrous, because everybody he beat was also using 10 different drugs. All the guys that he beat were on drugs, not just him. And they're not banned. It's not cheating. So even people say, oh, well, he's cheating. No, it's not against the rules in his sport. So it's already ludicrous enough that it's really big news. I mean, I get it because they make doping such a big deal in the sports world, but it really shouldn't be news. But the worst part is that it's 2 years old. Even if it was news, it would have been news 2 years ago, not news in 2019. Yeah, he's on a TV show. Yes, he's an actor. He's well known on probably, quite possibly, the most popular TV show of all time. But then they jump up and they want to make news out of it. And again, it's just at the end of the day, it's just clickbait by ESPN and these other companies. That's all it is. It's clickbait. And I mean, I get it, guys. I get it. They want to cash in. They want to get their traffic. We all do it. We all do it. But let's not treat it like it's actually news, because it's not. It really shouldn't be news even if he announced it today, because everyone should be like, well, yeah, I mean, the world's strongest man competing against the other world's strongest men in a sport that doesn't ban PEDs. Yeah, there's no possibility they're on. No, there's no possibility that anybody up there is on less than 5 different drugs. That's what's impossible. So it's just totally, really not just ridiculous, it's amusing at this point. But again, the funniest part being it's 2 years old, guys. It's not news. It's not news. I mean, the guy's 400 pounds of muscle. The question shouldn't even need to be asked at this point. And again, we come back to the other point. It's not even banned. It's allowed in the sport. It's allowed in that sport. Next, they should ask him if he uses straps when he deadlifts. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.